After 2 days of sunshine at Zandvoort, lots of early morning rain, a very damp circuit and a pretty chilly morning. Welcome to Day 2, qualifying 2, and then race 2 in Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Sprint Cup. And the circuit is drying all the time, but it's a completely different feel to Zandvoort in this rather chilly temperature compared to what we've enjoyed for the last 2 days. We had one race yesterday, the results of which saw Charles Weerts and Dries van Thor as the winners from Jules Gounon and Jim Pla. Simon Gachet, Christopher Hauser taking third and not scoring after an incident, a bad qualifying and a post-race penalty. Raffaele Marciello and Timur Bogoslawski losing their championship lead to Charles Weerts and Dries van Thor. So it is a wet track, it is a cold track, alongside which are David Addison and John Watson. And Watty, this might well be one of those qualifying sessions where the last car over the line gets the best time, because it's going to be drying out all the time. Yes,
indeed. The track, I mean, it looks to me pit straight, fairly dry. I can't see any reason why it would be deemed a wet track, but we don't know what's around the back of this 4.2 kilometre, 2.6 mile Zandvoort circuit. But last night, about 4:30 in the morning, it was hammering it down. It actually awoke me out of another World Championship victory dream. So, you know, it's a tough start to today.
Well, the teams have been saying anyway that the new Pirelli tyre is harder to turn on. Some cars seem to get the temperature out of it better than others, and on a cool track and a damp track as well. I think the teams that hang on and hang on and hang on and let other people go out and drive the circuit might end up doing better out of it. We'll see. Now, there is Valentino Rossi's Audi, but it's Fred Verviche that will drive it in this session. Remember, it is one driver per qualifying session, and you start the race for which you qualify. So these drivers will be the first drivers in the car when we get to the race this afternoon. Yeah,
another element I think will come into play, that ordinarily qualifying your first flying lap, if you get a clear lap, is going to be your best lap. Maybe the second you might consolidate, but in these differing track conditions, car driver packages might want to hang around, maybe not overload a tire on the initial lap to see just precisely where the track is damp or where the grip might be, but you need to get tire temperature. Tire temperature will be the key, along with a drying racetrack, as to who will end up ultimately in pole position.
Now, quite a few cars making their way down to the end of the pit lane, ready for that green flag to be waved in about a minute and a half's time. Others still on their stilts, not having tyres on yet. Are we assuming people are going to go out on wets with it being damp, or go out on slicks and try and get them to work?
Oh, slicks, well, I mean, from what we have seen from the Renault Clios just a few minutes ago, the majority of the racetrack, in other words, the race line, will be dry sufficiently for slicks. Stray off that race line, either to be helpful or maybe by dint of an error, maybe again your tire temperature is not up to the full operating Pirelli recommended temperature. So a brand new set of Pirellis there going on to the Garage 59 McLaren. So those tires will have a degree of temperature in them, but you know, sitting around the pit lane, you can see there is dampness in the pit lane, so that's going to fall away. So the opening lap will have to be done with care.
As far as we can see, slick's the way to go. Christopher Hauser, who had a really good run yesterday to take third place, he is now behind the wheel and makes his way down the pit road. The fast lane is open, so that means then that we are almost ready to go for this short, sharp 20-minute session. Number 87 Mercedes there from the Acodis ASP team, you can see at the head of the queue, with Thomas Drouet set to go first in this session. That's the car that he shares with Casper Stevenson and Thomas Drouet, the quick French driver. Others, there's the Pro-Am winning car of yesterday, Cedric Sparazioli's Ferrari, yet to drop down, yet to have the wheels put on. But again, it could be that some teams are saving themselves until later in the session. Green lights, green flag, we're in business.
Indeed, but you see just in the background there, the Mercedes that finished second, that's the Jules Gounon Jim Pla car, still up on its jacks. Now, Jules Gounon made a comment just a moment ago that basically this is a session where it will be the last man who crosses the finish line at the point where the checkered flag is out, who ought to be the quickest overall, because that's the nature of a drying track. So whether you're going to have one car on track with the final minutes clicking down, or whether you're going to have the entire field out, so it's always exciting. I mean, for us, commentating, wonderful. For the teams and drivers, it's a bit of a nightmare.
Because you've got to try and time it right, so you are the last car over the line, and you might have people, on the one hand, going quickly enough to try and get temperature into the tyres late in the session, but also trying to get out of the traffic so that everybody is ahead of them, and they will be the last car to take the checkered flag. Timing could be everything in this, in every sense. Raffaele Marciello, you're riding with him.
Absolutely. So through the quick left, and that's up at the master Bock. Then you come down to turn 9. But you see Marcello not really wasting time. He's on it fairly quickly. And this is still an odd lap, so exploring where the track, I mean, you have to say the track is all but dry. I mean, there may be hints of dampness in a couple of places. The place that you need to be most careful, actually, in these circumstances, will be the curbing. Now, damp on the inside as you come down to the Hans Ernst Bock. So a little bit offline into that chicane, damp. Damp on the right-hand side as you come into the Kumu, and in fact, the line in, so the bits of the racetrack that look darker than other bits. So now on to the Ariel Dyke corner. This is the banked part of the circuit, second bank corner, and into the pit lane comes Raffaele Marcello. Now, I wonder, is he coming back in because he went out on a set of tyres that were used yesterday to explore the track conditions to determine whether it's too soon or is it the right time to think about putting on a brand new set of Pirelli slicks? I don't know, but I think we're going to see very shortly. That's what's going to be the case.
Would you do a tyre cross, corner to corner or side to side, or in a rear-wheel drive car, does that not really play any benefit? That's one of the Audis exploring the outer reaches. That's number 33, which is Christopher Mees.
Well, that's a bit of a surprise, Christopher Mees getting caught out. And again, you can see just how tricky it is if you're slightly offline. Again, the temperatures are low. The racing line is such that we're on now on board with the Sky Tempesta Mercedes is relatively narrow, but this combination of that narrow line and cool or cold sets of Pirelli tyres. So Eddie Cheever is hammering through Schleblach. So trying to build that temperature and really risking maybe getting caught out by putting one wheel wrong, especially on those curbs which will be retaining water.
See, the sparks were flying from underneath the car. So Chris Froggatt's co-driver, Eddie Cheever, for Sky Tempesta Racing. Of course, both of them new to the Mercedes this year. He is on his run down towards the Hans Ernst Bock. The Ferrari there bails out of the way. So Eddie Cheever, absolute best in that middle sector, and a little bit slippy into the Hans Ernst Bock because he arrived too rapidly, couldn't slow down the car, and that's a lap that's got away. And
he'll have delivered a whole load of gravel onto the exit of the Hans Ernst Bock. So Watcher just simply couldn't slow the car down, tried to cut in, but just there's offline, there's dampness there, so that's thrown away a lap. We've got Jim Pla, who was sitting in the pits just a minute ago, now out on racetrack.
And he's done an absolute best look in the first sector, and again, you see how nervous the cars are at the end of that fast straight down towards the Hans Ernst Bock, riding with Pla. 2 purples, remember, purple means you are better than anybody, green means a personal best, and a yellow means slower than you were previously. Way up onto the curve goes Jim Pla, but he finds the traction into the line Dyke Bock. Now he's heading up towards the timing line. This ought to put him top. Dean McDonald's McLaren is currently the fastest. Now it's Patrick Niederhauser's Audi, and it's about to become the Mercedes of Jim Pla, who does a 1:33.842 to go fastest. So
it was a tentative lap for Jim Pla, but he still has gained about 9/10 of a second advantage over Patrick Niederhauser. So Vincent April in the McLaren, personal best, as you would expect on his first flying lap. So out of the Como corner, doesn't run aggressively on the curbing on the exit, then gets the nose tucked in right down low in the Ariel Dyke Bock. Comes across start finish line, so personal best for Vincent April. Will it be good enough? Well, it's good enough for 3rd place.
So that means that we have Mercedes from Audi from McLaren. This is Dean McDonald, who was looking rapid earlier on in the Pro-Am McLaren that he shares with Miguel Ramos. This car retired yesterday, and a yellow flag being waved on the run down to the Hans Ernst Bock. So somebody's got it wrong here again. Yesterday, this car had an alternator die on it, and it therefore left the car jammed in 4th gear. That's the Audi that's been off the road, and he's virtually at walking pace. Behind you saw 86 Mercedes of Petru Umberescu very nearly get into the back of it as he was rather caught out. Now the Audi has picked up speed once again. Was that the Christopher Mees car again? I think it was.
I think it was, but I tell you what, that'll certainly get the attention of the race director and the stewards, because that car, unless there was an obvious and clear problem, as Dean McDonald actually just has gone quickest overall, 1:33.7. So good lap by the young Scot.
Yeah, so he goes fastest, Dean McDonald. Just going back to the Audi, if that was the car that brought out the yellow flag, had it been through the gravel and therefore was it slow because it was recovering? We'll find out, no doubt. That's Fred Verviche hustling on in the Valentino Rossi Audi having to work the car very, very hard into the hands of Ernst Bocht. Well, they might be on slicks and the road might be all but dry, but it's still a real challenge. There's not much grip being offered out of the road.
No, there was not a lot of grip, and that indicates to me more than anything else. And Raffaele Marcello or Jim Plough gone quickest. Marcello's done a 33.1, quickest overall.
Right, Vervish goes through, goes fourth. So it's a Mercedes 1-2 now. Valentino Rossi looks on. He was really racing hard yesterday, and then he had a spin. It's not been a great weekend because they badly damaged he badly damaged their regular car on Friday in free practice. The car they're using, it's the same colour scheme. It's been re-liveried over the weekend, but it's a different chassis, in fact, different car. It's the one that Finlay Hutchison and others use in the Endurance Cup. Now, this is yesterday's winning car. It is Dries van Thor at the wheel of it. Currently, that car is 13th, but looking at where it is in terms of sector times, this should be a front row lap, but Marcello is going quicker still.
Yes, Marcello has got tyre temperature, he's got the balance of the car, and that car is showing the pace, which we didn't see in qualifying from Timo Boguslawski Saturday morning. Dries van Thor pushing is really 6,000ths of a second down in that first sector. Now it's dropped further back. So it'll be good enough, I suspect, to bring him up into the top three, certainly the front two rows of the grid. But, you know, Backler and the Porsche had gone, well, Niederhauser's gone third. Time's literally changing as the cars are coming across start-finish line. Just under 9.5 minutes of the session remaining. But Marcello, dominant, purple.
He's going to go quicker still, and into the top three should go Dries van Thor as he heads up towards the timing line then now. Dean McDonald's McLaren is the fastest. Van Thor does go third as predicted. Marcello goes back to the top, 1:33.026, and then that becomes a 1:32.093 on his next lap. Time a little bit slow on our timing screen, so it's a 1:32.093. That's nearly a full second quicker than anybody else.
I mean, that is a mega lap from Marcello. I mean, that's beyond anything that we saw for qualifying for Saturday's race. And I mean, again, Marcello just illustrating what a great competitor he is, but he's got his car into that car's sweet spot. The tyre and the car are hooked up. Matteo Drudi's has gone second quickest now.
And Dean McDonald is being one of the stars of the morning. We know he's quick, the young Scottish driver. We didn't see any of him in the race yesterday because the car retired early as he gets all sideways up the curb. But Dean McDonald in the McLaren, which quite often struggles to get its tyres up to temperature as easily as other cars. He is absolutely rising to the occasion here. He's still third. He makes his way up towards the timing line, and on this lap might be able to go quicker. He lost down in that middle sector, comes over the timing line. Does he stay in the top three? Goes second quickest. Dean McDonald then goes up to second, 1:32.808.
Yeah, he lost half a second in the middle sector, but gained 3/4 of a second in that final sector. So a massive gain. If he can get that middle sector sorted out, that is potentially a car that will challenge the pole position time, the temporary pole position time of Marcello. Now 7/10 of a second ahead of Dean McDonald.
Now, what about Dries van Thor? Because this car is currently fifth and it's down in the middle sector, so it might improve, but there's no guarantee about that. Marcello pits in the background. Van Thor does go slightly quicker and gets himself up to fourth in the time. So it's Marcello, McDonald, Drudy, Van Thor, Hauser, Pla, Marshall, Engelhardt, Clean and Vervish, the top 10. This is Matthew Drudy. Now, this looks like a decent lap that should get him up to second on the grid. Let's see, he's third at the moment. Comes up to the beam, and as he goes through, Matthew Drudy stays third. Lost out a little in that last sector, in fact.
I would imagine everybody in the pit lane is feeling the pain of the pace of the 89 Mercedes, because conditions are not expected to change much between now and the start of the race at 2 o'clock. In fact, there might even be rain coming in. And from looking at the camera lens, I just wonder, was that a little bit of rain on the camera lens as we look? And we've got just 9.5 minutes of the session remaining. Andrea Bertolini in the 52 Ferrari.
So that's another of the Pro-Am cars, but so is Dean McDonald. So Pro-Am pole is second, second in Pro-Am is 9th, and third in Pro-Am here is 20th, Bertolini Bales. New set of boots with half the session still to go. Marcello has had one new set of tyres, we understand from Gemma Scott in the pit lane, going for another one potentially to try to move the goalposts away from the others, including this car. Now Dries van Thor has dropped time in that middle sector.
And he's struggling to find the grip that he needs because there's just not the pace. And in fact, he's the second of the quickest, second quickest of the Audis. Matteo Drudy is in third, Van Thor in fourth, Christopher Hauser in fifth. So Dries van Thor will, I don't know what he's going to do to find more time. Comes across the line, does he improve? It goes second. Well, that was an improvement, but it's 6/10, almost 7/10 of a second away from Marcello. But at least he'll be currently, and again, look, little spots of rain as we come through turn 2. on those camera lenses. But that will be some consolation for Van Thor to be at least second quickest with, what, 9 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
Pierre-Alexandre Jean here, the Silver Cup championship leader with co-driver Ulysse de Pauw, outright winners at Brands Hatch. 14th the Ferrari is. This should put it into the top 10 looking at sector times, goes 10th fastest, and therefore the Ferrari still there or thereabouts in contention, and I suspect will go quicker still before the very end if the road keeps on drying, but these spots of rain are coming back, aren't they?
Yeah, there's more and more, we're saying, on camera lenses around different parts of the racetrack. It was in the early part around turn 2, that's down to the Hans Ernst box, so that's down at the bottom end of the circuit, the far end of the circuit, and there is a part of the racetrack on slicks. You do not want to be wet. Bank corners, slick tires, not a very comfortable situation.
Very, very steep indeed, that banking, really hard to walk or run around it. You sort of get thrown down to the very bottom of the racetrack there as Pierre-Alexandre Jean comes up towards the Masters Bocht, then turns through that right-hander. Burst of acceleration, and you can see more spots of rain falling on the windscreen now. If the tyres are nice and hot, they'll still cut through and work on the tarmac. But if there's a deluge, then it's going to be all bets off, and the forecast is for a wet day all round. Yeah,
and of course, the other factor is that the ambient temperature is only 13 Celsius, track temperature 14. So even though you got temperature in your tyre, when the water or the fluid gets on, and you can see coming down into the Hans Ernst box just how easy it is to get caught, even a smaller amount of moisture. Because the track temperature is so low, it has a bigger bearing on the warm tyre than if it was a high ambient or high track temperature.
Lots of arm twirling inside the car. Pierre-Alexandre Jean hustles on. Is this going to be an improvement for him? Green in both sectors so far. 10th he is, and bails into the pit lane, interestingly, despite the fact the lap was looking good in terms of sector times. Eddie Cheever here. We saw him go off the road earlier on. Now, 21st he is, but this could put him into the top 10 looking at the sector times because they're good, and he needs perhaps to bank this before those spots of rain become worse, but it's a fight into the Kumho Bocht. Lyndike curve beckons. This should get him in the top 10, John.
It's been a brave lap because the rain's falling down to the far end of the racetrack, and coming into that banked corner, you're never quite sure what it's going to be. Comes across the line.
Went against him, so it was good in the sectors, 3 greens, but just not quite as good as anticipated. He's up the curb again, and he's still pressing on. He's not given up yet.
No, he thinks there's still some life in the tyre. He wants to get a time in, and if the conditions do change dramatically, and you can hear the bottom of the car bottoming out as it comes through the exit of the Hugenholz curve, then up the hill and through the Rob Schlottemacher curves.
So WRT putting new boots onto Fred Verviche's car, onto Dries Van Thor's car. That's going to get some new Pirelli tyres as well in the Attempto garages or boxes. 66 ready to go back out again, which will be Dennis Marshall, who raced well yesterday, the young German driver. And he's got 6 minutes and counting as the car leaves its stand. So Marcello is still the quickest by 0.6 of a second from Dries Van Thor. Now, what about Eddie Cheever? He is still pressing on, and in fact, as you can see, went better in sector 1. So there's still the chance here of an improvement. Let's see as he comes down to the Hans Ernst Bocht. Drop time in the middle.
Yes, under braking, he's going to struggle, and he is again. You can see the rain on the windscreen, and that's the second time we've seen that car, the 93 Sky Tempesta Mercedes, plough through the gravel trap. And that was because here, under brakes, there's just a little additional amount of moisture on the track. There wasn't the adhesion under braking, and Eddie Cheever had no chance other than to bail and go through the gravel for the second time.
So is he going to stay out or bring the car in? There's your answer. He stays out, comes up towards the timing line. So Eddie Cheever's second little drama of the session, he goes through. And the road is going to get busy. So not only now is everybody looking for a dry line, but they're also going to be fearful of traffic, aren't they?
Yeah, and just you saw the corner of the picture, the 32 Audi making its way down the pit lane. So Dries Van Thor coming out of the pit lane in a second. We haven't quite caught the car, but back to Dean McDonald, who's on a sterling job, currently in the 3rd position, but way ahead of the sister car, not in the same team, now to Christian Klein, 2 McLarens. Doing very well in difficult conditions this morning.
So there is Dean McDonald, a bit behind the 8 ball in terms of mileage after not getting into the car in the race yesterday, but certainly impressing. Now Vincent Abril has just gone second in McLaren number 112. Vincent Abril 3 greens, and that puts him half a second away from Raffaele Marciello. So another McLaren coming good late in the session, but with 4 minutes to go, they could be 4 frantic minutes.
I mean, 2 McLarens in the top 3. I don't know who would have predicted that, but Van der Brill says the way the McLaren operates is a slightly more edgy car than, let's say, the front-engine Mercedes or Bentleys, which he's driven in previous seasons. He likes that style of car, so it's helped him here this morning.
Christian Engelhardt goes up to the timing line, 9th, but this could be an improvement for Engelhardt. Let's see, goes 5th fastest then as he goes over the timing line, 1:32.8. Dean McDonald is about to emerge and to put another lap on the board, but at the moment the McLaren has dropped to 4th in the times then. So what have we got? 3.5 minutes are on the clock, and off the road is the silver McLaren. That is Ethan Simeoni. And 15th fastest he is. If he can't reverse out of there, I fear we might be heading for a stoppage.
Yeah, that's coming into turn 9. Just, and again, whether he clipped the curb on the outside or got the dampish part of the racetrack, but enough for the rear. You can see, in fact, he's been on the curb, the skid marks, where it leads into the gravel trap. So that car is going to have to be retrieved unless he can select reverse gear and very gently reverse the car away from the gravel trap. But if he's there for very much longer, I suspect we might see. We've only got what remaining 2 minutes and 50-odd seconds, so.
But for as long as that car is there and it's a yellow flag, people should not be improving in that sector.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Christopher Hauser has done an absolute best. Red flag.
Yeah, not surprising.
Yeah. Race director gives him time to try to get going, but Christopher Hauser is the one that loses out most on that lap with a personal and an absolute best. 2 3/4 minutes. Now, the session can be restarted from there, but can they get the tyres up to temperature to do a good lap?
I think with great difficulty, but just looking at that camera shot from the Kumu curve, the headlights, the sheen on the racetrack there, it's just polished.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, it doesn't look like there's an awful lot of bite from that part of the racetrack in these conditions. So everybody coming back at 50 kilometers per hour to go into the pit lane. It's 2 minutes 40, so there is enough time, and that car can be removed in relatively quick order. So I suspect we may have this session restart because people will be able to go out, and Fred Ravish has got to help skipping a jump. That looks pretty uncomfortable. Now that's not porpoising, whatever the equivalent fish movement. Well, we've had porpoising in motorsport. Headline news. That's the limiter cutting in and out. I mean, it's enough to make you want to, you know what.
I was just thinking, I'm feeling nauseous just watching this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been out in shoppy season, I felt better than that.
A very long in-lap for Fred Vavish as the car jerks towards the pit lane, but it's on the limiter to make sure it goes at the regulation speed here. But it's not a comfortable look, is it?
I mean, imagine doing that around the length of Spa. You'd be going nuts.
It's the force going through the body. You see his helmet lurching forward. That's perhaps even more staggering.
When you hit the limiter, it's such an abrupt cutout. Then it cuts in, then it cuts out. So you're sitting, literally your head's being, you're like that sort of proverbial Churchill dog in the back partial shelf of your hot hatchback.
Now the session will restart, and it will restart on short notice, and that's why the teams are going to the end of the pit lane, so they can go steaming out again rather than lose any time by being on their pit stands. So it's just a queue, and who's at the front of it? It is Petru Mberescu, the Romanian driver. So he's going to be the first one out, but you want to be as close to the front of that queue as you can. Otherwise, the danger is you won't get a flying lap in.
No, you will not. And the gap between first and second is Van der Brill, who's shuffled the 32 Audi down to the second row provisionally. So Van der Brill is within just under 6/10 of a second behind Marciello. Marciello, I would be surprised if he's going to go out. I'd be surprised if anybody can actually challenge that woman at 32.093. By far and away the quickest lap we've seen all weekend here in Zandvoort.
So 2 3/4 minutes, and a flying lap is 1.5 minutes. So if you're at the back of the queue, yes, you'll possibly get one flying lap, but if you're at the front, you might get 2 flying laps in, and that will be the goal.
The biggest problem will be, look at the traffic of what you got, a dozen or more cars all lined up one after the other. And Jim Pla, and he's down in 9th position. He would like to get that car further up. Jules Cugno would like Jim Pla to get that car further up.
Would he ever? Another couple that are a long way down the field include Nicholas Bart's Audi, which is only 23rd, Benji Goethe, which is 22nd, and in to the pit stand comes Marciello I wonder whether they're rolling the dice here and thinking people aren't going to go quicker.
I think I would do the same. I think they've got a sufficient advantage. Van der Brill is the only car within just over half a second. Dries van Thor a fraction behind that. There is Van Thor going really, really slowly. He's doing it for a clear purpose. He wants those ahead of him to clear off.
Yeah.
And then what he's going to try and do, as Marcello's sitting there, will he go back out? We've got a minute 45. Somewhat marginal that he could get out, do a lap, and then go on to a flying lap in a minute 45. So I saw it is going. He believes that they can do it. So this is going to be a pretty fast out lap for the 89 Mercedes.
And he's done, in a sense, what Van Thor has done. In other words, lag back and let the traffic go, except he's done it from the pit stand rather than the fast lane of the pits. Right, green flag all the way the racetrack. Marcello goes back out then. And hustling on here is the Santalok Audi. Now, this is the car that Patrick Niederhauser drives and is 14, so that's another one that needs to improve, but there's only a minute to go before the end of the session, so you've got a minute to get back to the timing line, and I think Marcello will be amongst them, are going to miss that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Marcello, whatever the team choose to do, whether they just want to go out for one last run just again to get a further insight to what track conditions might be like. But the reality is he's not going to get across the start-finish line to go onto a flying lap before checkered flag comes out. 45 seconds, and still waiting to see the 89 Mercedes come and decide. There's Jim Plough, who will get to go and do a flying lap. He's got plenty of time, comes across start-finish line, so has the chance to continue on and improve up from his current 9th position.
So it is one shot for most of them, as out of Tarzan comes Jim Plough, then up towards turn 2. And that in turn takes you to the banked 3 coming up now. Oh, you just stare at the tarmac. The road tilts you uphill. And out of the Hugenholzboch, Jim Plough fires towards the Rob Slottermacher curve now. This left hand, a bit of a climb here as well. Over the brow, down towards Skyflash.
Yeah, this is, I love this corner. It's really, really challenging. You get the car in, if it's all hooked up, you really can feel the lateral loads. So Q2 has finished, the checkered flag is out, but Jim Plough can continue on. He's got a personal best, significant personal best in Sector 1. He's got clear racetrack ahead of him. It's the 46 Fred Revich directly ahead, but that ought not to have any bearing on what Jim Plough is hoping to achieve. Session is officially over, but if you're on a flying lap, you're allowed to continue and take the flag.
Raffaele Marciello missed going on to a flying lap, but he came into the pit lane anyway. So whatever the ASP plan was, it meant that Marciello did purely an out lap and straight back in. Jim Plough down in the middle sector though.
Yeah, so a big drop off in time. Don't know where that came. He had 0.3 of a second gain in Sector 1. Now, again, rain on the camera lenses down at Kumo corner into Ari Landijk. So maybe he can claw back a little bit. Well, it's now dropped to 0.4 of a second, whatever's going on, timing and scoring. So this might be a consolidation. But he's dropped down to 11th place, but he's up to 7th. So a net gain. In fact, he's up to 6th place. 7th place. So
7th for Jim Plough, and Raffaele Marciello is the man that is the fastest. Checkered flag shows. That red light is there to say it's the end of the session, not that the session is stopped. So it's the checkered flag that people are looking for. Dennis Marshall goes 3rd, ahead of Dries van Thor. McDonald 5th, Christian Kleen 6th, Engelhart 7th, Jim Plough down to 8th, Hauser is 9th, Mathieu Drudi 10th. And waiting to see if anybody else can improve right at the very end. But Raffaele Marciello, by just over half a second, is the man that takes the top time, and a job well done. And we saw yesterday the team really does rely on Marciello's speed, and so much of that is, for qualifying purposes, absolutely key for the race result around here, because it's difficult to overtake.
Yes, I mean, having that advantage, half a second and a fraction over, is a massive amount on a racetrack where the top 11 cars are covered by just under 1 second. So it's all down to Marcello now at the start to get into Tarzan ahead of the field, to keep Vincent Abril, Dennis Marshall, and of course, more importantly, Dries van Thor in the 32 Audi. It's that 32 Audi that took the lead in this championship, having had a disappointing, in fact, no more than disappointing, a disastrous day for the 89 Mercedes.
Well, Raffaele Marciello will be relieved about that. Good start to the morning. Let's just look at the order quickly. Raffaele Marciello then ahead of Vincent Abril, so Mercedes and McLaren on that front row of the grid. The margin between them just over half a second, 0.567. Dennis Marshall third. Good effort to be the best of the Audi drivers ahead of Dries van Voor, whose session never quite clicked, and a really good run by Dean McDonald in the Pro-Am Garage 59 McLaren ahead of Christian Kleen and then Christian Engelhardt. Jim Pla 8th, Christopher Hauser and Mathieu Drudi rounding out the top 10 from Christopher Mies and then Klaus Bachler, Nicolas Scherl, and only 14th, Fred Verviche and Pierre-Alexandre Jean, a long way back as well. So Raffaele Marciello it is then who tops the times, gets a point in the championship for that, and can tell all to Gemma Scott.
Raffaele, was it intentional that you didn't go for another flying lap at the end there? You had the time already in the bag.
No, I mean we tried to go. We saw I had a good lap in the first session, in the first stint. We waited a bit. We went. Then was red flag, so it was a bit unfortunate because I think I was able to prove a bit my lap time. But I mean it was enough for pole, so it's a good point, and we still to finish today the job.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in the race.
Thumbs up from Raffaele Marciello, point for pole, and after a barren day yesterday, that is pretty important for him.
Absolutely, they had their championship lead taken away from them because of a disappointing race. I've used stronger language, but it was a massive, and they even got a penalty for contact with the Audi in Tarzan as we look at some of the highlights.
Which involved Dries van Voor limbering up pre-session and everybody being able to get out nice and early to try and put in a banker lap. Spots of rain continue to fall, but Raffaele Marciello was the man of the session as off the road very early on went Christopher Mies, exploring exactly how much or how little grip there was at turn 13. Eddie Cheever had a couple of dramas going off the road into the Hans Ernst Boch. This was the first of them, scattering gravel onto the racetrack as he rejoined, and Jim Pla was another man hustling on in another of the ASP Mercedes, but he never matched the pace of this car. Raffaele Marciello being the man to beat. So as he stormed his way up to the top of the times, we had a good run from Dean McDonald as well, to be quickest in Pro-Am and 5th overall. Christopher Hauser was a man on a mission, so also in number 12, Audi Mathieu Drudi, and a red flag caused by this spin for Ethan Simeoni. But when the session restarted with just a couple of minutes still on the clock, nobody could match Raffaele Marciello's pace. Fastest by half a second, and he will start on pole position for this afternoon's race, which is due to get underway at 2 o'clock. Join us for that. It promises to be a great race. We'll see you later. Bye for now.